Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. Great to have you here. If you've come here via YouTube and want to know more about what we do, well, just head on over to officehours.global. That's our primary web portal for more information and links about the show. Note you can use the QR code over here. If you just want to shoot that with a phone or other device that handles QR, that will take you into part of the queue where you can put your questions in. You can also type in the little URL at the top if you don't want to use the QR code. The askofficehours.com link will also get you into our question system where you can put your questions in. And of course, our show is run by your questions. Once they're in the Mukana queue, the other part of the process is to vote on them. So if there are questions that attract your attention, you want us to spend more time and emphasize those questions a little more, vote them. We appreciate that, and this show is driven by your votes, so it's very important to participate in that if you'd like. Today in our second hour, we're talking about Apple's new iPhone 15. It's shipping now. People are getting them in their hands. I know Alex has one, and he'll be talking to us a little bit about what he's explored with his new phone. So we'll discuss the features and how to get the most out of them. It has some more video capabilities than the prior phones had, so that's pretty exciting. That's our second hour today, but we are in the first hour. So Mitch, what is our first question for today?
Thank you, Bill. First in, Andy Kokendorfer from Vieira, Florida. A live event to be streamed on YouTube has a DJ during the pre-show. How would you avoid a YouTube content strike?
Alex is going to start us off. Alex?
There's a couple different ways to do that. Number one is that you can, with these songs, a lot of times you won't get strikes, you'll get flags. So you'll get flagged for it, but you won't get striked for it. So what you do is you take all those songs and you upload them to you can put them all in one long video and upload them to YouTube. You don't even need to actually publish it. YouTube has a content checker, and it will tell you what's going to happen with those as you upload them. So you can find the songs that you might want to use there and just see if you're going to get a flag or you're going to get it. Now, what happens with the flag is you'll oftentimes be demonetized. So you won't be able, so if you care, then that, but most like corporations or people running events may not care about the monetization. They're just trying to get it out on YouTube. So if you don't care, then you can just take the flag. If you do care, then you want to be careful. You want to be you won't be able to use commercial work because you're going to get flagged for everything that goes through. But what you're looking for is, are you going to get a strike? A lot of us have a bunch of burner accounts on YouTube that we use this for just in case. So, and we will oftentimes publish those as unlisted because the unlisted will go through the same YouTube eye as the public one. The private one sometimes is treated a little differently. So what you can do there is just publish as unlisted to make absolutely sure. And if you get a strike, then use another account the next time. So you get 3 strikes typically before your account is not able to stream. So if you put those up, you can make that happen and you can figure out whether you're going to get flagged or not. You will get flagged for everything that is commercial. It's just a question of whether you're going to get a strike. And the reason the strike is important is the strike may actually kill your event while it's live, whereas a flag will just flag it as it goes through, demonetize it later. It won't really matter. Now, the right way to do this is to go to every company, every publisher that publishes these things and clear them. And we have done that, but it takes a long time. Like, you got to find the person who's accountable for it. You got to, talk to them, and what they have to do is go into a CMS inside of YouTube, and they have to clear list your channel to play that content, and you have to match that, and you have to do it with every single song. Now that may seem like a lot, but if a DJ doing 20 minutes of it is probably 8 songs, right? So that's 6 to 8 songs. So there's 6 to 8 songs you might have to clear to do that. But you do have to work with the DJ so they don't do any kind of any audibles. They have to really play exactly what they're going to play to make that actually work. But you can do that as well as far as clearing those. There's probably some cost involved and so on and so forth for that. Another way that you can go is using something like Epidemic Sound. Epidemic Sound will allow you to purchase. These won't be the pop songs that you might want for the DJ, but if you're looking for DJ kind of music, Epidemic Sound is a Swedish-based company, so a lot of the pop songs that you hear come out of Sweden, and they're pretty darn good at it. You can find a bunch of stuff that probably fits inside that'll give you the groove, but isn't necessarily the pop songs that you would need. And when you sign up for Epidemic Sound, you're clearing yourself for YouTube. So those are things that those are a couple different ways that you can handle all of that in ways that aren't going to get you knocked off air.
Hey, Alex, have you had much experience in terms of buyout music and whether that creates copyright flags? I know there was some confusion.
Epidemic Sound is like a buyout music. It's you can. I wouldn't use needle drop. I wouldn't use needle drop where you're purchasing those like you would with stock photography. So the stock, here's why, is that other people have used that stock audio from things, and they've claimed it in their thing in YouTube. So you may get a flag or a strike from somebody, some random producer who put it up, because what they do is they put it up and they say, I'm going to claim my content. They're not thinking about that song or that beat mix or whatever that's there, and so they're claiming it kind of indirectly. So you'll see this random person that has claimed the song on your thing. So usually companies. So what Epidemic Sound does is they're putting it up. They're putting that up, but they're claiming all of their own content before they make it available on their website. We should bring them on to explain this a little bit, but my understanding of how they do it is they claim it ahead of time, and then they have it on tracking so they can see who's using it. And of course, they can come after you if you aren't paying for it when you put it up. Now, you get to keep that content for the time that you get to keep anything you downloaded while you were subscribed to Epidemic Sound into perpetuity. It's not like you lose your thing if you stop paying. There's a subscription of like $10 a month or $20 a month, I don't know, something like that. So it doesn't mean that if you stop subscribing, you suddenly can't use the music. And they seem to be pretty lenient about the whole thing. I mean, it just keeps you in the up and up. But that's the one that has been the best at doing that. And to be honest, it's some of the best royalty-free or semi-royalty-free music out there is Epidemic, in my opinion. I've used it for a bunch of projects, and I've used a lot of different ones, Pond 5, and then many ones where you pay a lot more. If you pay a lot more, you oftentimes, they've gone through that process as well. So if you're paying $1,000 a track or $5,000 a track, you're going to get the kind of music that you expect. But if you're paying $10 a track or $5 a track or $15 a track, you're probably going to, you risk having problems all the way through to make that actually happen. So I think that Epidemic Sound is probably the safest way to go. The safest way is to buy the copyrights out, or buy the access to those copyright materials directly from the publisher. But that's the most expensive. The next one down is Epidemic, which is not very expensive, but will protect you. And then the final one is to just put stuff up there and test it and see what happens.
Mitch.
I think the safest thing to do would be play classical music, where the copyrights have written. They've Library of Congress.
But the publishing,
it's the performance
is still there. So some Philharmonic played that, did that, and they own the rights to that performance rights to that. And you won't be able to, now if you took it, and the problem is that you say, well, I could just use the MIDI, right? And then just play it out using, whatever. But the problem is it'll do a match against something that's already has performance rights claimed. And so you'll still end up with that problem. And of course, if you're trying to get the DJ vibe, doing a DJ vibe to Beethoven's Fifth might be hard. I'm just saying there's a lot of strings, and they don't know if they scratch as well.
So, yeah, copyright has always been complex. It takes some time. So just as Alex noted, be careful. Try to dot your I's and cross your T's so you don't have the hassle of putting all that work into your piece and then finding you're subject to a takedown or something like that. That's never any fun. Let's go on to our next question.
Next one in, John Preto, Las Vegas, Nevada. For those lucky enough to catch Guy streaming from Zoomtopia, what was the device that Guy was showcasing?
And I'm really upset because I missed it. Guy, what did you do and how did it work and what's happening?
You missed it. It was kind of a happy accident. So there was a behind the scenes tour at Zoomtopia that I really wanted to go to, and it was actually sold out. I wasn't even sure if I was going to get in. Luckily, we got friends, and I was like, hey, do you mind if I show this in after hours where we can actually take 30 of our closest friends or so into the behind the scenes? So we were able to take this cart, which held... and thank you to Keenan for loaning us his disaster group modem to allow this to happen. This gave us 4 cellular modems, which we used at Cinegear as well. And that was on a cart with bad wheels, actually, for those that watched it. you learn that, $100 on a cart is not where you want to be. You want something with some beefier wheels. So we had some troubles getting over threshes. But the device that we were showing there was called the Ivy, IVI, spelled, I stole the table tent that we had in our booth. But yeah, if you go to myivy.com, you can check it out. Actually, I have a little, I don't have screen share up, but this is kind of what it looks like. I can show it on my iPad. This was a USDZ that we converted over and did a Keynote magic move. But basically, it's a prompter 10-inch screen that has a 4K webcam behind that. And then it's got speakers, a microphone, And then you just plug in your favorite NUC or Mac and or tablet.
That is awesome. How do people find out more about that?
I'll put a link in the chat to have people show up. But it was well received. I was impressed to hear from teachers. The mayor of Fremont had their tech people there, and he was just like, we could have so used this. He's like one of our top guys that gave us good kudos, good feedback, because that's what we were there for, is to get feedback, see what people thought of it. And we were lucky to be able to cruise around the show floor, because some of the Zoom people came up and they're like, I didn't know we sold a mobile sponsorship. And I'm like, I'm just bringing my friends on a tour of the show floor. And so I'd show them, all of our guys in Germany and
so you went
Australia.
guerrilla a little.
A little guerrilla, and it was in the
Awesome.
It was in the show notes. No guerrilla marketing, and I'm like, but I'm just showing my friends from around the world, Zoomtopia, that couldn't fly all the way out here. We've done this before, so it was a lot of fun being able to, especially go behind the scenes. And thank Andy and Sam for really letting us go on this 45-minute tour. We got to see Tiles, which is an app that hasn't been released yet, but it's by Liminal, that allows you to. From what I understand, you put people inside of it, and in Unreal Engine, if somebody turns off their camera, it can flip around. It goes with Production Studio. So there was some cool stuff that I didn't get to hear all of it because I was so busy running the cart behind the scenes and checking for reactions and trying to frame things up. I'm so used to having a regular camera, but I had to go in Discord and say, hey, can somebody request camera control and take control of the camera behind the scenes? So I think
you were recruiting crew online in live time during the show.
Exactly. I was like, take control.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we actually had Michael Slade on an iPhone, so he gave us a secondary shot, which was cool. So we could actually see what was going on from an angle in case I got blocked. So there was a lot of learning experiences being able to go on the show floor differently than a well-planned event. This was just kind of like last minute. In fact, I barely got some road goes on them, which was super handy because we had one on Andy, one on Sam. That gave us good intelligible audio because they were so far away. At some points, they were probably a good 20 feet away on some of the things. And those cable troughs were like danger. Man, getting that cart over those cable troughs backstage was something else. But it was a lot of fun.
Nice. Well, I'm really now sorry that I missed it, but it sounds like you had a great time. And so those of you who have been playing with office hours but haven't got as deeply involved, this was something that it looks like it ended up in after hours. So people got an extra special look inside things at Zoomtopia by virtue of the fact that they had been hanging around office hours and playing with the back end stuff and generally getting to know everyone. So that's a big plus right there for why we always make it available for you to get involved. And if you're interested in this kind of technology, it can pay benefits. Let's go to the next question.
Next up, Douglas Carmichael. I'm considering getting into drones with a DJI Mini 4 Pro, but concerned about protecting myself in case of an accident. Would an umbrella insurance policy be a good idea just in case of an accident during non-commercial drone use?
Courtney Gooden.
Yes, if you carry a general liability insurance package, I have one that I pay about $230 a year for, that has $1 million liability for just anyone that would sue me over anything that they would think I would be liable for. But make sure to check the policy because insurance companies are weird. They like to exclude stuff if there's, if they get a lot of claims about something, they will end up sticking that in as an exclusion. I don't think they've been sued a lot of times over drones, so you're probably safe there. And also, if you think your car insurance or your homeowner's insurance may cover you, it may exclude certain vehicles and certain non-registered things. So take a look at that too.
Jesse.
Also, I'd change the direction you're looking a bit. That insurance policy isn't really to protect you. The drone is $2,000. That's to protect everyone else for what the drone might do, the level of damage it can do. Also, I would suggest dropping the non-commercial drone use. That's not protection from any kind of liability at all.
Yeah, insurance is complicated. And if you don't, if you're planning on really making money at this through your career, at some point you're going to have to kind of get your toes at least into it, find an insurance broker locally for you. I will tell you that before in my early career, I had a broker that I could trust and after was night and day, because I ran into circumstances where somebody said, hey, we're going to shoot in the football stadium. And I called to try to make arrangements to get in, even on like a weekend when it was empty to shoot. And they goes, yeah, it's fine. You can come as long as you have, $2 million in an insurance certificate. So to be able to call a broker and say, look, I need a cert for tomorrow and it has to cover this and that. And the broker, who was doing their business correctly, would pop that onto a fax it to them, and the next thing you know, we're allowed to shoot as opposed to not being allowed to shoot. So having that, building that infrastructure of a trusted insurance broker or someone, agent, that can take care of these kind of things is a big deal if you want to make money at this in the long run. So just a note. Next question.
Simon Ray from Midlands, UK, asking, does the panel have any recommendations for one-time password apps for the iPhone to help with two-factor authentication?
Jason, what say you?
Absolutely. OTP auth, which you actually have to put into the App Store. Cooper's with 2rs.de is the website. What I like about this one is it's cross-platform. It works for Google, Microsoft. You don't need 5 different double-factor authentication apps. It will do all of them, and it is cross-platform. Your watch, your phone, and the Mac will work perfectly.
Nice. All right, let's go to the next question.
Brody Hefner in New York City. The U.S. Congress recently passed a bill to eliminate the college degree requirement for tech-related government positions in favor of skills and experience criteria. Is this consistent with tech employment practices at other large organizations?
Jesse, start us out.
I can't speak on other large organizations, but I can speak on our hiring practices, and this is absolutely consistent. You need to know how to do the thing, and a lot of the things in the tech sector aren't really being taught because they're being invented in real time, and it'll be 10, 20, 30 years before the people who are inventing it now retire and become teachers who teach those things.
There you go, Alex.
I mean, I don't hold it against people who have a college degree in their field, but it doesn't really affect how I view, in general, all of our hiring practices in the last, my hiring practices at least. I don't even know where people went to school. It's not part of a resume. Usually it's someone that I know and it's something that's connected. We've seen that also occur at a variety of companies. There's still some stodgy companies that are requiring things, but in general, that requirement has been being eliminated from most of the tech companies in the last 5 years, just because they can't find enough people. And in addition to that, there's a strong belief, if you look at the Grow with Google and some of the other things, those are, Grow with Google is Google giving up on college degrees. Like that's what you need to know, is they don't feel like they're getting the people that they need from the general sector, from the education sector. And so they're just going directly to, you don't need a degree. You can start this anytime you want. You can go through our training and get in. So you should look at, they're not just saying we're not going to worry about your degree. They're actually building an entirely parallel training system. And so you should, I think that you're going to probably see this happen a lot more because these companies are having a harder and harder time finding talent. And that's going to have them build more and more training programs that are related to not needing the colleges to do that.
Mitchell.
TV personality and voiceover extraordinaire Mike Rowe has a thing called Mike Rowe Works. And Mike is a big proponent of not necessarily having to go to college to learn these things and get that degree and pay that huge amount of money you're going to pay and be saddled with a huge payment plan. So the idea is that certain skills are best left through the old method of an apprenticeship where you learn what you're doing. It's like when I got into radio, you don't really go to radio school to be on the radio. You go to radio to be on the radio. So it could be the same thing. It just has to be recognized.
Jason.
13 years, I guess, no, 14, 13, something like that in business. I've never been hired on the basis of my degrees. So, yeah, it's kind of a non-starter.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I think that's been my experience too. It's what you know how to do and what you can prove you know how to do. I mean, in the video production and things like that, show me the last work you did, and that'll tell me more about you than any degree on the wall. On the other hand, I will say that I had to visit the doctor a few days ago, and to see that certificate on the wall from a noted medical school was a kind of a comforting thing. So I think there's some areas where it's still the traditional education system is kind of an absolute, and others where it's definitely not. Courtney?
Yeah, you have to also be careful. There have been, over the years, a number of tech schools that offer you just a certificate. They're not really college equivalents, that offer you a certificate and offer and say they will provide links to employment or will get you a job. But most of them haven't gotten people jobs and have been sued out of existence. So be careful about the tech schools that advertise that they will place you into a job if you complete their school, because there's a whole lot of scams out there that are offering that.
Next question.
James Babbitt from San Diego, California has a question. Will Blackmagic Design release new ATEMs soon? And which ATEM Mini has the best features and value?
Jesse Kester, what's your opinion?
I think we always assume that Blackmagic is working on something in their ATEM line. I don't know when it'll come out. But as for what's the best ATEM Mini is ISO. Whether you get the 4-in or 8-in, the Mini or Extreme, the ISO has absolutely changed everything about how we produce pretty much all of our content in-house.
Alex?
Yeah, I think that my favorite one is actually the ISO Extreme SDI, because it has 4 outputs. So it's a little inconvenient because we have a lot of stuff that's HDMI and SDI. I mean, I have an HDMI one sitting on my desktop right now, but in general, I would say that the SDI version, because it has the 4 outputs, has a lot of advantages to it. It is you can get a lot more I/O for just a little bit more money in the 1ME, but I don't believe the 1ME has a supersource, which the ISO does. So and the supersource does make a big difference in adding value to what you're doing. So it's kind of it's still hard. There's a lot of, it kind of feels like it's becoming like it feels like the 90s with Apple, where there's so many different versions of them. There were so many different versions of the Mac that we could barely figure out which ones we should buy. And Blackmagic has a lot of solutions in the ATEM line. But I think that the one that that of all the ones that I've bought in the last 3 or 4 years, the one that gets the most use or is the most all around. I mean, obviously the best one is the Constellation, but that one's really expensive, and that's what this show is running on, a Constellation. But as a home environment, I would say that the most convenient one for home environment is the HDMI version of the Extreme. The one that has the 4 outputs on the SDI version are pretty useful.
Mitchell.
Yeah, I agree with Alex. The SDI just makes it more secure and more convenient, more video-like. I'd like a lot less buttons and a T-bar. Thank you.
I can't release your idea of a T-bar. Good. Guy.
Yeah, I'm not sure when the next release is going to happen, but I'm really excited about the SRT implementation on the output. So the Web Presenter 4K will do SRT with H.265, which slashes that bandwidth requirement in half. And we've got YouTube in beta with SRT. So the future is very exciting because we'll be able to get out of locations at maybe 1.5 megabit, whereas before we couldn't have a nice looking image without having to downscale to SD or 640 by 360 size pixels. So, and then REST API, that's the other thing I'm hoping for, which we'll see.
Fingers crossed. Remember, everybody, your questions drive this show, so you can put them in all during the show. You can put them in before the show. You can put them in the night before. And you can use this QR code that's appearing on the screen right over here right now to shoot it on your phone or something like that, get a question in, or you can punch in askofficehours.com, or you can use our standard Mukana system. But regardless, please put your questions in. Use the voting system to vote them up and down. The ones with the most votes we get to more rapidly and spend more time on. So thanks for playing. You really do control what this show does every day, and we appreciate your time to do that. Let's move to the next question.
I have a question. Anyone have any interesting stories about the emergency test on all phones yesterday?
Ooh, interesting question. We all heard it. At least I assume everybody heard it. Courtney, let's start with you. How did it go for you?
That's the interesting thing about my response is I didn't hear it. And I had my phone on me, but I was in vibrate mode. And I'm thinking I may have, at the time it came in, I may have been plugged into my car via USB over Android Auto. And later I pulled my phone up and I saw that it had occurred. It had the warning was full screen, but I never heard it. It's going off now. Oh my goodness. Oh no, wait, that's just me. Sorry about that bug. I hope they fix that bug in the next version of A10, the last question. But yeah, so I didn't hear it, so that may be a chink in the armor of that notification. So if we're under a nuclear attack and I'm in my car plugged into Android Auto, I may never know it.
Oh dear, that would be not sensible. Mitchell, thoughts?
I slept through it, didn't hear it, didn't know if it actually happened, but it was on the screen afterwards.
I knew it was coming. I had spent 2 days. I told my wife about it. I reminded her in the morning, and still when it happened, it shocked me. And I jerked and said, what is that? Oh, that's what it is. So I heard it. It came through, I think, for most people. Hopefully it was a good test. I mean, obviously people have gone away from radio and television being their primary means of communication. Everybody is now connected. Most everybody is connected via cell phones or mobile devices. So architecting and checking out a system that can do public broadcast of that nature just seems sensible to me. So I'm glad they're testing it. Next question.
And it's from Brody Hefner in New York City. Please comment on the interesting video and audio features of the Pixel 8, 4K 60 HDR processing in the cloud, audio magic eraser that isolates noise into layers, night sight, etc. And it's on a link there that he's mentioning 34 minutes into the program.
Mr. Preto is going to help us out here. John?
Thanks for posting this. I enjoyed this. I'm not an Android guy, but I like watching new stuff, and they made some interesting announcements with this phone. They came out with the Blade Runner zoom and enhance feature. Zoom into Sector 32. Remember that scene in Blade Runner? They're offering that as a feature. They've got some interesting LLM model in the phone. So it's going to be the first phone with a local LLM model built into the phone, which is interesting. And then it's got some interesting camera, computational photography stuff that they're doing there. So good for Google.
Audio magic eraser. It sounds intriguing. Jason, what say you?
For once, I finally get to say this. Android, iPhone has had the grid control for a very long time.
Courtney.
And am I imagining things, or maybe it was the iPhone that now does temperature sensing, so that you can actually take the temperature of a surface by pointing the camera at it. So it has some type of infrared thermometer built into it, which is very handy to troubleshoot equipment, things like that. I don't think it gives you a visual representation like forward-looking infrared, but I think it does give you a temperature readout, so you could. They haven't gotten it approved for medical use yet, so you could take someone's temperature by just pointing the camera at them.
That's interesting. I would think that would be something. I know Light Meter, which is one of the apps I have on my phone, does a reasonably good job of reading Kelvin temperatures of lighting and things like that, so it wouldn't be too big a leap for them to go to actual ambient temperatures out there. I'll keep my eye open for that. Let's go to the next question.
Andy Kokendorfer from Viera, Florida wants to know, thoughts on your YouTube auto-generated live captions. Are they poor quality?
Jesse.
Compared to what you can generate in Premiere and Resolve, you could call them poor quality, but for what you pay, they are incredible quality.
Yeah, I've been surprised. I do a lot of work, and a lot of that work is required to have captions. So I've been in the kind of auto-generated caption space for a good little time. I use particular tools, Simon Says and things like that, to toss up audio recordings of the videos that I'm making and get them translated up in the cloud and bring them back down to allow for standard closed captioning for ADA compliance and things like that. The system is pretty robust up there. The tools are pretty robust. I have known from the early days that YouTube auto-generates a lot of those. And so the question, when you're talking about poor quality, is are you talking about the translation accuracy, which is one factor of this, or are you talking about the display of captions and the ability to move them around as you like? some types of captions, particularly the ones that are mandated by the FCC and other things, have very strict, rigid things about how you can format them so that they fit into their system. A lot of the people that I work with, art directors and things like that, say, can we get rid of those and can we can we supplant them with better looking, more highly designed captions? That becomes a whole nother question. Alex, I'm going to toss it to you. What do you think?
I think that in the land of getting good enough, to understand what's going on, I think that YouTube does a great job, and I think it's a huge service that they have to make these things more available automatically. But definitely, there's a lot of the large language model, the Whisper, Mac Whisper and Whisper based systems that are doing incredible jobs at doing this. And I agree with Jesse compared to the Premiere and Resolve both have really good engines that are kind of surprisingly effective at what they do. So I would definitely take a look at those. But you can get pretty far. The other thing to remember is that that's just an SRT file. So if you see specific issues with a YouTube version, you can go to that file, you can download the SRT, you can edit it and put it back up again. It's just a text file. So you can fix things specifically that have been auto-generated by YouTube. And I know a lot of people who will do that to get the transcript. The cheapest way to get the transcript is let YouTube do its thing, wait, pull down the SRT, and there's your transcript.
There you go. Insider tip. Let's go to the next question.
Douglas Carmichael, thanks to FILMiC, I'm considering buying SoundDesk. Would it be better to buy the Mac App Store version or buy directly from Loud Lab?
I'm sorry Chris isn't here. Alex, stand in and tell us.
So my recommendation with some of these ones, especially ones that dig a little deeper into the OS, is to buy it directly. So I don't know this for sure whether Loud Lab is different, but remember when you buy some of these apps, and I buy most of my apps through the App Store, so that's how I buy most apps. So it's not, but when they're digging into your OS, sometimes the sandbox requirements that are required for a Mac app to be in the App Store can limit what they can actually get done. The publishing process also slows down how fast they can iterate sometimes. And so it's actually, and Chris may have a better answer for me specifically with Loud Lab, but I would say in general, when it comes to things that are, when it comes to situations where you're digging into the OS to do routing and so on and so forth, I think strongly about buying the apps directly from the company.
Courtney.
And you might save 30% by buying it directly from the company because you won't be paying the Apple tax. That's true of YouTube Premium. If you buy YouTube Premium from the App Store, from Apple's App Store, you're going to pay 30% more for it every month than you do if you buy it directly and sideload it into your iPhone.
Yeah, what Alex said resonates for me as well, which is that it's a balance. There's some things I go direct, and particularly things that are complex, and I want to maybe have a more direct relationship with the company because it's something that's maybe part of my business is built on or something like that. I will say that the fact that Apple's App Store is constantly rolling out updates and making that easy, and I can sit down once a week or every 2 weeks or once a month and just say, update all my apps, I'm between projects, and have it just ripple through my entire App Store library and bring anything up to date that needs to be brought up to date is a big plus for me. It's a convenience thing. So that's what I do most often. But Alex, thoughts, addition?
And I would say that I would never build an app that would require me to sell it directly. So I would to me, the only place to put the apps is the App Store because, personally, because it's just too much trouble to deal with, all the things. I used to, I've sold millions of dollars of software, directly. And I would never go back to that. So that's the big reason I got out of it. Not having to manage the serial numbers, not having to manage the downloads, not having to manage, all those things are a huge value. And again, it's, for a small company like this, it might be 15% more rather than 30% just because they're not going to, I doubt that they're selling more than $1 million of SoundLab, but I could be wrong.
Let's go to the next question.
Dan Huber from Erie, Pennsylvania. Has anyone had an issue with Stream Deck buttons just deleting? My profiles are there, but programmed buttons are gone.
Jason, do you have any experience with this?
I don't have any direct experience, but I have read about it. So if you're on Windows, it's C:/user/your username/app data/Elgato/Stream Deck/backup. And that'll have all your Stream Deck profiles, and you should be looking at that for any computer that you plug the Stream Deck into. Mac OS, it's /users/your username, library application support, and then Elgato backup. Google that and see if you can restore them.
Sometimes I think these computers are doing so much for us that I continually forget how much is going on behind the scenes that have to be precisely correct with all the correct errors in there for the whole thing to run. So good luck. Hopefully, Dan, that helps you in a right direction. And maybe if you didn't get all that and write it down while Jason was saying it, ping him, and I'm sure he'll be happy to send you a link to that. Let's go on to the next question.
Andy Kokendorfer from Viera, Florida. Are there any gotchas to be aware of when using Teradek Bolt wireless camera transmitter and receive units?
Guy?
Yeah, it depends on which model that you're talking about. And this is one of those devices where I'd say rent and definitely call a reseller to see what your environment looks like and explain to them how many feet away that you're going to be, because you might want to have multiple receivers. So the higher end ones will have 4, 6, or even unlimited numbers. At the $15,000 range, you could have unlimited receivers. So in case somebody gets behind something and your reception gets blocked, it could hop automatically, or you just see the feed coming through garbled, and you can just your switcher operator can just bounce over to the clean, the better of the feeds. Yeah, get that transmitter up high, get that receiver up high. If your transmitter's on the camera, you're pretty much there at eye level. The other thing is power. Make sure that you have power to the units and you don't run out of juice. Let's see what else. Yeah, that's basically all I've got on those.
Alex,
rent ahead with rented a day extra. The challenge with the Bolt sometimes is getting the pairing to work, especially if you have rental units, because people put them into weird states. And so we've had trouble. So we've had trouble with getting them on the day of the event. And they'll get delivered in the morning for a 2:00 event, and we'll spend the entire time trying to get them and talking to folks and trying to get that done. So if you're renting them, you just want to get them the day before. Make sure that you have time to make sure that they're there and time to talk to someone about it, because we have found that the bolts specifically are a little. I love the bolts. I have two sitting right here, so I love the bolts, but they can be when you're in a rental units. We have found that they can be a little quirky, and it's not because of the hardware as much as the hardware is very flexible. And people who rented it before you don't know exactly what state they put them in, and you can't. It's hard to get them back to a. Even when you reset them, it's hard to get them back to a state. Someone can put them into a state that's hard to recover from.
And Courtney.
Yeah, and if you're using wireless audio hops to get to your camera as well, to feed audio into your camera so that you've got a wireless receiver mounted on the camera as well, and that camera is using one of the Bolt or other wireless transmitters, make sure you move that receiver for your audio. It'll try and get it at least a foot away from the antennas on the Bolt, because the RF that's coming out of that, even if you're on a different frequency, can swamp the receiver in your wireless mic receiver, and it'll reduce its sensitivity, and you get all kinds of dropouts and things. So there's something to look out for. And make sure you're on a different frequency, because if that Bolt is on 2.4 gigahertz or 5 gigahertz, and your receiver is in the same frequency band, that interference is going to be much worse.
Thanks, Courtney. I mentioned it before, but I will mention it again. If you have questions, this is a great time to put them in. I think we're going to have room for a few more today before we get to the top of our hour and our second hour topic, which, as those of you who are here for the beginning of the show know, is about some of the new iPhone capabilities in terms of its video and camera system. So we'll be talking about that in our second hour. But right now, if you have additional first hour questions, use the QR code over here. If you'd like to just put them into the system or use the Mokana regular thing. And as always, your votes do count. Thank you for your questions. Without them, this show doesn't continue to do what it does, and we like doing it. So thank you. Let's move on to the next question.
Samuel Nordvig from Norway asks, what would be the advantages of having a REST API on the ATEM versus the current Blackmagic Design API that can be accessed with tools like Companion?
Guy Cochran's going to help us out. Guy?
Yeah, I'm not sure of the entire dynamics of the developer path. I just know that it was something that was asked for and that should be coming here shortly. And it'll just make it easier for us to get to these devices from afar. So that's the reason.
Alex, what say you?
It's a lot more standardized. So REST access means that if you know how to do REST commands, you can get to it. You don't have to, whoops, I just hit a button that made my...
Whoa, that's an interesting thing.
It's not, the power's still there.
You've angered the gods of electricity.
So, so what you saw there was the shortcut on my phone. I was moving something around, is to turn all the lights off. The shortcut on my watch is to turn them all on. And I took my phone out of a case because I wanted to show something with the iPhone, and I slipped against that. So maybe that's not best action button behavior. Anyway, so that's what happened there. So the thing with the REST command. Yeah, the REST command, the main thing is that you don't have to deal with the whole API. You don't have to deal with all of the things that we require to build an interface to it. Sure, you can use Companion, but any developer that understands REST, if there was a REST control over the ATEM like there now is over the phone, can simply use something like Postman or other things that allow them to access all of those controls. Now, hopefully, if we got that, we would get more controls over the ATEM than what the API currently does. What we see with Mix Effect Pro is something that Adam figured out on his own. That's not part of the API. so that's that's some genius work that is hard labor to figure out exactly what's happening there. The same way that the folks at Skarhoy figured out how to do a lot of those controls through Wireshark. So the thing is that that's what they had to do to make that actually happen. So with REST API, what would be great is for the ATEM to be completely exposed, so that we can have the same control that we see from Skarhoy's or from Mix Effect Pro, but through direct REST commands.
Interesting. Mitchell Hill.
It might be useful to some of us, me included, what a REST command is. Somebody could explain that.
Yeah, this is I'm not the biggest expert, but basically REST commands are web commands that will allow you to basically make calls, and set up, processes. So many things, like for instance, our FSHDRs are all REST. And so these are, what it allows you to do is make requests and change all the settings and everything else through an internet-based appliance with relatively simple commands within your code, as opposed to having to build a piece of software that would do it or an interface. The way I would equate it is it's another thing that's kind of like OSC in some ways, but it's a much more generalized one that works across many pieces of hardware. Most hardware that we get now that's professional level has some REST API access, so that we can actually get to those, and it's a more generalized skill set, which would make it a lot easier to work with.
Jason, you had some thoughts?
I'll try to be succinct. So REST is a style of programming that allows you to set constraints very quickly for web-based interfaces. And on the basis of that, it turns out it works really well for simple devices or even complex devices. So think about AirPrint. The way that AirPrint works is incredible because you don't have to download a driver. That's because Unix, CUPS, the CUPS protocol, did all of the necessary things such that if a CUPS protocol compliant printer is available on a network, your iPhone just needs to know how to speak CUPS. Think of REST kind of like that.
So it's kind of a easier translation language to the big application programming interface, the API, underneath that would normally be where you'd have to talk to the thing to get it to do things. But this is a simpler abstraction. Am I kind of in the general vicinity for that, Jason?
Yeah, more or less.
Okay, thanks. Trying to wrap my head around new concepts. That's part of the fun of office hours. I love this. Let's go on to the next question.
And it's from Jesse Kester in Glendale, California. I'd never buy a used cell phone because the battery life would be uncertain. What's the word on electric cars? Should we assume that after a year or two of regular use, we'll have to replace the entire battery?
Courtney, have you looked into this?
Yes, I have. I have a plug-in hybrid, and the warranty, I have a Kia, and the warranty on plug-in hybrids and the all-electric Kias is 100,000 miles or 10 years, and that includes the battery. So if your battery hasn't degraded past the point that it's warranted, which there's a certain percent of degradation over a number of years, but it still will run, and still it may not have quite as much range at the end of that 10-year warranty. But no, you don't have to replace the batteries every 2 years or so like you do on your phone. They're warranty. Most manufacturers warranty the batteries for 7 to 10 years. So,
well, that explains why you don't have to run your car on 10,000 AA's that are rechargeables. That's good. Chris Fenley.
They actually are 10,000 AA's that are rechargeable. That's what makes up
Really?
the battery.
Oh dear.
That's not too far from the truth, Bill. I think given the recharge process, I think 100,000 miles or 10 years is about right. I mean, I know a lot of people that put a lot more than that on in 10 years in a vehicle, if it even lasts 10 years. That's maybe half of what I think a lot of people put. A lot of people I know, I should say. There's a lot of different people that drive their cars differently. I think that the resale capabilities of battery cars is yet to be seen. I don't think, the modern era of battery cars are not really old enough that a lot of people are trying to off them or buy used ones. But I think that I don't know that there's going to be as much resale value. Yes, you can change the battery pack out. We had to do it on my stepdaughter's hybrid. It's not a full battery car, but there are companies that are, like aftermarket third-party battery replacement facilities. And we had to do it on her hybrid because she was literally just driving down the road all dumb and happy. It was a great day, and all of a sudden, just boom, it was done. It was just done. It wasn't going to work at all. And it was, it was like $2,500, $3,000 to replace the battery on her hybrid, and she was not ready to do that. I had to step in and deep pockets help her with that thing. But yeah, I wouldn't buy a used Tesla. I think that's a fool's errand. I wouldn't do that at all.
Wow, this whole thing has my mind reeling. Do I have to specify that I want a car based on rechargeable D cells rather than a car based on rechargeable AAA's?
You should look into it,
Courtney.
Bill. It's quite interesting. There really are a bunch of,
They are a bunch of cells that are the size of
but they're,
they're
oh
3102s. They're the slightly larger.
Interesting.
There's a whole bunch of them in the floor of a Tesla. A whole bunch.
Fascinating. Yeah, I learned something. Courtney?
Yeah, I was going to point out that Tesla has a program that recycles the Tesla batteries and puts them in power walls. So they pull the old batteries out of the old Teslas or wrecked Teslas where the battery may not be damaged very much or consumed very much, and they put them into power walls. They can't put them in a new car, but they can recycle them, and they do that with used Teslas that they have to replace the battery on for some other reason, the controller, etc.
All right, I looked back up and we have more questions than we had before. Let's
one quick thing, Bill, if I can.
Real quick.
There's a guy on YouTube named Yehu Garcia, Jehu. He used to make camera rigs. Jag 35, I think, was his company. The orange camera rigs. And toward the end of the camera rig DSLR movement,
oops, you dropped out for me. Is it for everybody else, or is it
you
just me?
You're muted on, you're mute.
I'm sorry.
All right, we got to move on. We've got a lot of questions to get through here. So let's go to the next question.
Next question for Ronnie Hofsøy from Tromsø, Norway. Where and how to get into the YouTube SRT beta program?
Guy, help us out.
This is one of those things where watching the show and then listening and subscribing to the after hours alerts. One of the times we had one of the gentlemen from YouTube in after hours giving us kind of a rundown of what was coming up, and he offered up beta access. So I was one of the ones that was paying attention and jumped on that beta, and I got it back in January, and I was testing it with OBS 27 when it first hit. I live streamed from CES along with that same disaster group modem, and was able to get out with a super low. We only were getting a couple megabits, so I was able to get out a signal. The other way is if you're a hardware manufacturer. So there's two betas. The first one that I talked about was through somebody inside YouTube. The second one, if you're a hardware manufacturer, there is a way to sign up. So if somebody's listening that's a hardware manufacturer or an influencer, there's another way. Ping me on Discord, and I'll see if I can put you in touch with the people that can approve that.
Next question.
Samuel Norvig from Norway asking, why would you want to cut a show with a T-bar, or is it just nostalgic, Mitchell?
Mitchell, you've asked yourself the question, so answer it very quickly. Why would you want to cut a show on a mixer with a T-bar?
It's tactile. I like that.
Okay. You know, people have the tools and they use them the way they want to use them. This is one of those things where everybody I've ever known who's a TD or a director has their own style. For some, that's as important as a race car driver from the dirt circuits having a really good 4-speed shifter to do what they want to do. You can't convince them to change. It's just the way things are sometimes. We're going to dive through these pretty quick. So let's get to the next question.
Next question in from Kenny Hampton in Greenville, Illinois. I read the Las Vegas Sphere tech uses hockey puck-sized LEDs placed to what appear at approximately 8 to 12-inch centers. Is this for the exterior projections only? Any good resources showing more about this tech? It's fascinating.
John Preto, you're a Las Vegas native. What have you heard about what's going on the outside of the Sphere?
It's a good description of the exterior. I put a great video explaining all this in Mikana chat.
There you go. Excellent. Let's get on to our next question.
Funsak Dorje from Dharamshala, India. Hi, panels. Do you use your own audio system when going for a live streaming gig, or do you use the already existing audio system in the auditorium? What does the panel advise?
Alex, start us off here.
I will do everything I can do to avoid using the mixer in the space. I will almost always want to get either splits or other things away from that that process. So I don't. I try not to use their audio. Sometimes you don't have a choice. I mean, that's where your main mics are going, and that is another thing to kind of take a look at. But so I think that's the. Try to avoid it. If you are going to get that, what you also want to do, if you're going to do the stream, is you really want an aux out with the program send. And you don't want to be using, if they've got, oftentimes you'll be in an event like this and they may have some kind of malt box that's going out. That's a disaster typically. And so really you want to get upstream from that malt box where everybody else is plugging things into it. It's a temptation to use it because it's easy and it's already available, but it's worth having the extra conversations that are required to make that actually happen.
Jesse, real quick.
Typically, we interface with the location liaison and our client who's actually hiring us to do the event. If the location liaison gives us permission to use our own sound system, but the client can't afford it, we will seriously consider eating that cost because the control it affords us and the ability it gives us to do a better job is more valuable than money usually.
Courtney.
Yeah, and check with the venue, because a lot of times if it's a union venue, you will not be allowed to touch the system or stick any of your equipment in line, and they will have a union mixer or technician there who has to run all of the equipment.
Yeah, I've come across, nothing makes me happier than be able to get channel inserts which go in pre-fade and just pull the signal right off. They can still do what they want to do, but now on my side, I can do whatever I want to do. That to me is the best of all worlds, but as everybody has said, it's not always possible. Let's get to the next question.
Craig Kadoki, Toronto, Canada. Is there any scanning or coordination software or hardware for wireless video transmission like there is for wireless mics?
Craig, I have never seen anyone doing that in a facility. That doesn't mean it doesn't happen. And I would imagine that on big tech scrums like massive news conferences and things like that, the wireless coordinator may handle both video and audio and be very careful about that. Alex, you've worked in bigger things than I have. What say you?
Yeah, at the very highest level of some of these connections, you definitely have some resources to look at those. Now, you can generally do something kind of like an RF Explorer that was going to give you an overall idea of what the RF is looking like. Now, that's not going to handle a lot of the lower end transmission signals that are using the 5 gig or 6 gig or 2.4 gig or whatever. But if on the higher end ones that are using, basically they're using licensed frequencies that they know what they have there. And so when you're talking about like football or NASCAR or those types of things, they're not really looking for frequencies because they have licensed frequencies that no one else is allowed to use, and they can definitely scan for those frequencies to know whether those frequencies are being encumbered by somebody else, and usually they'll go find them because it is illegal for them to use the signals that have been licensed specifically for these providers. So there's definitely at the lower end, there's not really a great way to do that in my opinion. At the higher end, When you start talking about RF, there's definitely ways to go after it, but it's mostly after enforcing licensed signals that should be available. And the reason they're licensed is specifically to keep people out of that.
And Courtney.
Yeah, and even if you do an RF spectrum scan with an app on your phone, or if you have a receiver that will do that, a software, a radio that you plug into your laptop, a lot of digital transmission is software hopping, which is frequency hopping. So it jumps from frequency to frequency many times a second sometimes. So, when you see a scan, it may not be telling you the truth because frequency hopping equipment may end up and cause distortion in the band you end up using.
Let's go to the next question.
From Courtney Gooden, who just spoke in Hollywood, California, I came across this article on the new Pixel 8 phone that demonstrates the temperature sensor. Can you tell me what's wrong with this demo?
Courtney, take it away.
Yeah, I saw this picture, and this is them demonstrating the temperature sensor to read out the temperature of your drink. Can you tell what's wrong with that picture? It shows the drink as being 88.1 degrees Fahrenheit, and ice water, as you know, should not be 88.1%.
It's very warm ice
degrees Fahrenheit. So I'd say the manager who created that picture for CNET, I think, should be dismissed.
Yeah, a little embarrassed. Well, whatever. Hopefully these new capabilities coming out in smartphones make it better and better for all of us who own them. But that looks like it's not quite ready for prime time. Let's go to our next question.
Here comes a QR code question from Martin in London, UK. I'd appreciate your insights on Canon's PTZ camera series, especially the more budget-friendly CRN 300 model for a solo live streamer. Do you reckon that using two PTZ cameras alongside a standard camcorder for wide shot is good enough for a small panel?
Jesse, give us your thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. It would be good enough for a small panel, and it would certainly be a fine camera for a solo streamer as well. What I'd be careful about with what you just described is what I wouldn't want to do is have the PTZs in the wide shot, so every time you cut to the wide, you're rearranging all the PTZs at the same time to get the next shot, because it is just too plausible that the audience would be waiting for the wides, watching the PTZs go crazy, and then cutting back into the close-up shots. I would keep the PTZs out of your wide.
That's a good bit of advice, I think. Alex?
Yeah, oftentimes if the PTZs it depends on the color of the PTZs and everything else. We put them in front of curtains a lot, and you don't really get to see them very much, especially if you drape over things. And so a lot of times what we have here is if you have a stage that's here, we will put the PTZs oftentimes just to Jesse's point, just a little outside on either side here. This means that the generally the wide shot is going to just grab the stage and they'll be outside of that shot. But even if you're on any wider than that, typically you're not going to notice them very much, especially if they're moving or not. They're really small in a wider shot. So you just want to give them a little bit of space. They'll gather much less attention than a person up there, though. So the PTZs work really, really great there. Then what we do is we build them with quadrants in their auto. So we build them with typically 4 quadrants, or on a larger audience, 8 segments for each one of them. So you can just push the number, you get close enough to the person asking the question quickly, and then you're able to find them there. And that has worked really well for us.
Excellent. Well, we're getting close to the top of the hour here, and that means we're getting close to our transition into our second hour topic, which today is going to be iPhone video. Just remember that as of today, I was looking as I was getting ready for today's show, 1,290 shows daily. Haven't missed a single one. And what Alex started here 3 years ago plus has been amazing. We've covered so much of the production arts, audio, video, IP, compute, streaming live to the web, so many other topics. It's possible to list them all here. And I wanted to just take a second as we're getting ready for the second hour to remind everybody that we have got archives of all of that on the website, including our coverage of events events like NAB, Cinegear, and IBC, and very shortly we'll be coming to you live from New York for NAB East and the AES, the Audio Engineering Society's annual gathering. So lots to look forward here. If you go to the website, you can scroll down through just a smattering of the highlights of our 3 years doing this. It's also searchable, so you can go back and look at the things we've been doing for a long time. It's got links for how you can become more involved with the show, should that interest you. And there's a lot to find there. That's the bottom line. Friday's show tomorrow, we are going to be talking about cable management, one of the always more interesting topics that we deal with here. I know sometimes we wish all the world was just wireless, and things that used to take a lot of infrastructure and building out have moved on, and a lot of things are easier because you can just put two devices up, they talk to each other, do the handshake, and then they're moving along. But we still need a lot of cabling. We have to move power and data around. So we'll discuss how to select cables, store cables, run cables effectively, all the rest of that. Also, don't forget that this show comes to you every single day through a huge and impressive group of volunteers. We're going to talk about it a little at the end of the show, but I also just wanted to stop here in the middle of the show and just remind everybody of what a village this show brings together every day to make this happen. It's very impressive. So we're going to hold here and come back in just a second. Welcome back to our second hour. It's great to have you here. Today we are talking iPhone 15 Pro, all of its new video capabilities. Apple announced the new iPhone 15 series not too long ago, and among the notable changes is that Apple has finally changed from the Lightning port that were used by all the iPhones forever in favor of USB-C connectivity, and gained along with that a new era, hopefully, for storage and connectivity options for shooting video inside the Apple ecosystem. I also understand that this also means you'll be able to attach larger storage systems like NVMe drives and things like that. So people who are worried about filling up their phones if they're shooting particularly in higher res formats and running out of space may have a back-end repository and be able to shoot longer, more complex pieces, have more flexibility in terms of getting footage in and out of the phone. So a lot of positive changes. The other big news is that the highest end model, the iPhone 15 Pro Max, has a new periscopic camera in that allows extended zoom range. Now, I have read some reports that say if you get out at the end of its zoom range, you don't necessarily get all the resolution that the chip itself promises. Maybe Alex or others will talk about that today as we go through this. But we're here today to help you unpack all the new data. So we're going to start with Alex, who I understand has recently gotten and started testing an iPhone Pro 15 Max. Alex, what's been happening so far? What do you think?
Well, I think it's pretty impressive. I think that I don't know if people, someone can ask the question and people have to vote the question up, but I have a video of me talking about the 3GS that was 15 years ago, if you guys want to see it, but someone's got to put the question in. I'm not going to just show it to you if someone doesn't do that, but I found it. I was looking for something else and it popped up and I was like, oh, there I am, much thinner and much darker hair 15 years ago, talking about why I was excited about the 3GS. Wired picked it up. It's the most viewed video I've ever made. It was like 2 million views. Anyway, if someone wants to see that, I'll see if I can dig it up here real quickly. But the thing that we saw back then 15 years ago was that, wow, this is a really great small little package, and I think we could turn this into a phone. And the vision that we had of it, I think this is the first phone that really has done that. Like really turned it over. There's a lot of things about it that they've added. Of course, the next one will be better, but what you're really looking at is a great overall phone that you can do an awful lot of work with. The USB-C works really well. I'll show you some clips from stuff that I shot that was shot directly to USB-C. So a quick overview of some of the features that we're looking at. Spatial video, which isn't available yet, but will be available later in the year, is going to allow you to shoot in stereo on your camera. But it also supports log. It also has support for ACES. So there's a lot of professional tools being built into it. There's a professional group inside of Apple that is, folks from the industry that are constantly looking at how do we make Apple products closer to the industry work. And you can definitely see their fingerprints, on this process. That it is the ability to record up to Apple ProRes 4444 on a phone is kind of an amazing process there. I have successfully done 4K 60 in log in Apple ProRes to a drive. So what's funny is if you turn it above Apple, if you're at 4K 60 instead of 4K 30 and you go up, it says, hey, you need a drive. Then you think, oh, well, how am I going to get the drive to integrate? Of course, this is Apple. So when you plug in your USB-C and you're set to something that will need it, it immediately, the drive just shows up. It just says USB-C connection on it inside the Apple app. So it is a lot of the tools there. So being able to shoot log. Now, a lot of people are probably trying to figure out what log is or why they should shoot it and why does that make sense. I will tell you that it does take a little bit more work to shoot log because it means you can't just share it immediately. It's now in a format that you're going to need to color correct. I will show you a little bit about how that works. Let me pull this over here. I'm going to pull this, and now I'm going into Resolve. I will say that it's going to be interesting. One of the things I'm really interested to see is what Apple does at its at the summit, and what they talk about related to Final Cut. Because I will say that I opened up this stuff, and the Final Cut tools are pretty rudimentary when it comes to log. You can do some basic correction, but I was a little like, oh, I don't know if I can actually do much log work in Final Cut in its current state. But I feel like now they've put all these tools into the phone, something's got to give on the Summit side or on the Final Cut side to make that actually work. But if you look at this is a very short clip. Let me let's cut to this. So here I am in Resolve here. And let's pop this up. So here you can see this is shot in log, and what I've done is this is a very hard shot to shoot specifically in linear because I've got the sun coming out of the trees here that are there, and so that is that's usually the kind of thing you don't want to shoot in a linear format. Is a really, really bright source with things in a shadows. So now if I go to my color here, you'll see though that I haven't clipped anything. It's all there. So if I grab onto, let's say, my color space transform, drag it in here, and I will tell you out of the gate that I'm not a colorist. So I'm going to do some basic stuff here. But what I have to do, what you're doing with a LUT or with a color transform is that you are saying, this is the source, this is where I'm coming from, and this is where I'm going to. And so, because you're setting that's the transform that you're applying here. So here, in this case, I'm saying I am coming from Rec 2020, and here I say input gamma is Apple log. So there it is. So there's the Apple log that it says this is where I'm coming from. And now you'll see it got really dark here because it doesn't know where it's going to. And in this case, I'm going to say I'm going to Rec. I'm going to go to Rec 709, and I'm going to use we'll say gamma 2.6. And you'll see it get a little brighter here. It's still a little darker. Now it's going to get crushed a little bit going through my switcher as well. But then from here, I can grab onto this. Now, normally I would do this in a separate node, but we'll just do it here. So you can see me start to bring this data up, and I can take this and push the blacks back down a little bit. I can, the gain right now is going over to the top here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull it back a little bit here. So now so that sun is all there now. Like I'm not clipping the sun. And again, going over zoom, this is going to be really hard for you to see. Zoom was not designed for color correction. But what you can see here as I work with this is I have a lot of latitude, and you'll notice in the RGB parade, you're not seeing straight lines going across. There's a lot of data that is in that environment. So being able to do that kind of shoot on your phone is kind of amazing. I will say that I think that I've done a little bit, because I just got the new phone, I didn't put FILMiC on it yet, but I've been looking at some of the stuff online. It does look like the curve that you get I think that the curve that you're getting in Apple ProRes or Apple log is superior to the FILMiC Pros. It looks much more washed out in its natural state, but that generally means that it's protecting those highlights a little bit more effectively. So I think that I think that it's actually a pretty strong setup. So log is one thing that you want to pay a lot of attention to. If you're doing anything professional with your phone, if you decide I want to go out, and I will say I've been shooting on video cameras of all size, shapes, and form, for the last 20 years. And I will say that this is, you can go out and shoot stuff that you could charge people for with this phone. Now, is it going to replace the Blackmagic cameras that I have? Is it going to replace the Aries that I rent? Is it going to replace? No, it's not going to replace those things. But you can definitely shoot very high quality footage that competes with many things smaller than those. So if someone has a camera, for instance, that is at a, I would argue at a 1/2 inch chip or 2/3 inch chip, like a standard broadcast camera, you're going to find that it's going to be hard to tell the difference between this phone. Now, what you don't have is some of the controls on the exterior of the device, but the quality of what's going into the camera is extremely high. Again, I'm not replacing it. I'm not replacing the Blackmagics that I use for work or the Aries or the Venices that I use for other shoots with an iPhone. But I will say that if I want to do pickup shots, and I do think that, again, you could go out and shoot things for a client, and if they didn't see you shoot it, the problem with phones and problem with equipment is the client there or not? If they say, "Hey, you're shooting with an iPhone," then you may have an issue. But if they saw the footage, I think that they would have. If they just saw the footage out of it, and especially if your wider shots or other shots were intercut into it, we have to remember that when you're looking at like, what do they call it? The drive thing where they're all singing in the cars. The chips on those cameras where they're in the cars singing. I don't know what that's called. Sing along. The Apple thing. Chips are not better than the iPhones. Like on those little cameras. So GoPro? A lot of the stuff is. Some of them, they were originally GoPros. I think they're now actually. Then they moved up to the Blackmagic Minis. The micro studios that are in there. But this would be competitive. I would. And it's a very, very, this would be competitive with the older Blackmagic micros, I think. I mean, they're 4/3 chip, but the color science on them isn't, on the older ones. The newer ones look great. I haven't gotten to use them yet. So I think that there is, the phone gives you an awful lot that you can capture. And again, I don't think that the filmmakers and professional videographers are really the target market here. It's really going to be people who are building educational material, corporate material, YouTube material. This stuff it's impressive. And you could definitely shoot some, very impressive footage, with what we have here. So I think that it is a, being able, but I would get your head around the one thing is storage. You will go through an enormous amount of storage. I shot a 3-minute piece with of my daughter in log, of course, because she was performing bass on a stage, and it was 21 gigs, so forth. So it's definitely going to suck up storage on your phone. So I would definitely recommend it. I will say that capturing the hard drive, capturing to the hard drive is very, very fluid. A lot of us, one of the reasons we weren't using these phones for any kind of production in the past or any kind of pickup shots or anything else was because getting big files off the phone was impossible. It was just it was a no-go. Being able to shoot directly to the drive, which I've done successfully here. This clip that you just saw me show was shot directly to drive at 4K 60 in log, and then when I plugged it into my Mac immediately came up and said, "Hey, do you want to put this in photos?" Which I did. But the point is it knows what it saw there. It pulls it. It'll automatically want to import it. But I don't need to. What you're saying me do in this Resolve clip here, this is looking directly at the drive that came off my phone. So it literally I plugged the drive in and loaded those clips directly from the drive, and off we went. So it's a pretty interesting thing. The support for ACES means that it fits into the larger ACES workflow, which is the Academy's color workflow. And so that means that, and really, I don't see filmmakers using iPhones as, I don't see them, replacing their Aries with iPhones. But what I do see is now, so for instance, someone in a movie is shooting footage of somebody with a phone, like, and you want to see that footage. I could see them capturing that footage in log on the phone and being able to convert that footage back to what they wanted to, to pull that back in. I also see people doing pickup shots with it, like a couple seconds here, a couple seconds there. There's a lot of times we use smaller crash cameras that are a variety of sizes to make that actually work. So I think that it's a really, and again, the portability of it, no one's ever going to, your home videos will never be the same. I feel like, looking at my my grandfather shot all his home videos in the 50s with 16 millimeter. So he had a 16 millimeter film, and that stuff has held up for a very, very long time. And I feel like there's something about this footage is the first time I've seen it. Like, this is for a home video, the first thing where you start to see potentially archive quality, of your footage from your iPhone. So I think it's a pretty exciting, pretty exciting phone update, which is why I wanted to talk about it. We want to make sure everyone knew, hey, something's come up that's a lot different. And the things that are different are the log, the support for ACES, the USB-C, and the 5X camera, which works pretty well as well.
Nice. A lot of good, interesting things there. Just in my practice, it's been interesting. The last 2 years, I have gotten more iPhone work than I have big camera work. And it has to do in part because my clients are interested in short form promotional stuff that's generally going onto the web and things like that. But I was always astonished. I did it the first time to go out and shoot an art walk for one of my larger clients. And I came back, I had literally started that with the Blackmagic 6K, but after the first 10 minutes of this incredibly complex environment with people moving around and jostling, I realized I just couldn't shoot as well. So I ended up on my iPhone with things. I'm actually going to show a little bit of that. This is the second one I did for them. But this is the kind of imagery that was coming out of my iPhone just right on HDR in terms of the way things worked. It was an amazingly easy, fast, fluid way to go to an event that's happening in real time, get a lot of really good looking imagery really quick. I was able to use a monopod to get up these high shots and low shots. It's fast paced, but the quality of the imagery I just came back with, and I said, my gosh, this is way easier than I've ever been able to shoot before. It is not perfect, but it is certainly viewable. And the first time they saw the first one of these I did, the next thing you know, I'm doing all sorts of these, and I'm getting a lot more interesting stuff. Oops, I made a mistake. I should not have hit that. I wanted to show you a little bit of nighttime work. We had to do some stuff at the Rady Shell, which is a new concert venue that opened here in San Diego. And so I shot daytime. I also shot nighttime. And some of the last couple of shots you'll see here, just in terms of we're sponsoring this. We wanted you to know that we're involved in this. It's a great new facility. The daytime stuff came out really well, but it was the nighttime shot stuff that really caused my jaw to drop a little bit. And here in just a couple of shots, you'll see some. The sun is going down here. I'm just on the top of a very, very small rig. In fact, I didn't even take my larger monopod. I took the smaller one, and I'm getting this kind of coverage out of this with no additional lighting whatsoever. It was an amazing thing to be able to do these quick little videos that show a different side of an event that doesn't take the big crew, that you can just go out and see all sorts of interesting things that you wouldn't normally get to see. So I am sold on the potential for using an iPhone in professional work for things that it just doesn't make sense to bring out a big crew and do things on. You can be more mobile, you can be more involved in the crowd, you can get more energy and enthusiasm than if you're dragging a big crew behind you in terms of things. And it's just, I find it really empowering as somebody who loves to shoot video to be able to get this kind of thing very quickly. So that's been my experience with the iPhone. I'm hoping I can do more and more iPhone shooting because it has been kind of creatively freeing to me to be able to go execute videos without all the infrastructure that I used to have. Mitchell, let's hear from you about what you like and don't like about this idea?
I'll try to make this quick because everybody knows I'm the technical Luddite that still has the 6S iPhone here. First of all, Bill, the footage you've shot and the way you shot it is stunning. It looks great. And the fact that you can use a LUT now to extend the workable image once it comes out. But as a professional videographer and editor, I hate the idea of all of this. I resist it, maybe for the wrong reasons. But just because they put those features into the iPhone doesn't necessarily make you a photographer or a DP, something that normally would be left with somebody using, like Alex suggested, an Arri camera or a Sony Venice. It doesn't instantly make you as good as those things. So I have to, let me just have my little moment here. I have to question, does a LUT make people buy more iPhones? I don't think so. Maybe a very small percentage of us that recognize exactly what that is. If I tried to explain to my sister what a LUT was on her new iPhone 15, her eyes would glaze over in the first 15 seconds. So I recognize that it has that capability, and that's cool. But does it really belong in a phone?
I'm just saying that the only thing I'll say about that is that the parallel between what you just said and Cytex operators talking about me when I was learning Photoshop is almost perfect. Because they were like, you're letting all these kids in. I came into working on ads, for Prime Sports Network or whatever, print ads, and these Cytex operators were out of their mind. And here's the truth. I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea how to do ads. I once printed, we joked, I've told the story before, I once printed a square, long, a 3-inch by 9-inch or something like that on a paper that was completely black for the Albuquerque something or other. That was because I didn't understand what dot gain was, right? And so I didn't, so I just did that. I didn't know that I should set it to 85 line, not 300. Anyway, but what came out of that was a completely different way of doing design, and what came out, Photoshop, empowered kids like me that were getting paid $3.75 an hour to, do ad work that was all over a region. I did get a raise to $7.50 an hour. Anyway, so because I was doing such good work. But that replaced the ad agency, and the ad agency had, was expensive and had people who went to school for this, and I was just hacking away at Quark and Photoshop. And so I completely agree with you that it doesn't make someone that, but it gives them access to start becoming that. I parlayed that into working in Star Wars. But it all started in that area. And I think that what we're going to see is a new kind of filmmaker that's coming out of it.
I respect that, and I think that makes sense. But it's also true to say that I know many filmmakers that are recently graduated from college, and they think if they could mortgage their home and buy a red camera that they're now a filmmaker. Same kind of a thing, is that it doesn't make you a filmmaker just because you have a red, and just because you have an iPhone that does LUTs and has a magnificent image that it can record doesn't make you a filmmaker. I'm just wondering why these things have to coexist in the same box.
I guess what I would say is that now you have something that's very accessible that you can carry in your pocket and you can shoot. If someone said you should, what's the best way to become a filmmaker? Well, to do a lot of it. And if you have the tools that will get you a lot closer, doing a lot of it is now easy because you can't buy that red. You can't buy that. To me, I'm going to use the iPhone. I would use the iPhone until I could afford a Blackmagic camera, and then I can do a whole bunch of things with Blackmagic cameras until I can. And I would only, for very specific things, might rent an Arri or a Venice, for bigger shows, which is what I do now. Like I own Blackmagic cameras, and I rent Arri or Venice cameras for specific things that are required. I'm not going to buy. I can't afford to buy the Arri, but I can rent it for a couple days. And so, but my workhorse cameras that I own, that I use every day, are Blackmagic cameras. But the idea that I was able to go to my daughter won't let me. My daughter was this is a good example of the iPhone. My daughter was at she's playing in the jazz band and she's doing this great jazz work, and I wanted to shoot it, and I offered to bring a Blackmagic 12K with a 100 to 400 millimeter lens so that I can get a great shot of her playing, her first recital. She had no interest. She does not want to stand out like that, to have her father be the weird guy with the big camera. me being able to pick up my iPhone and shoot a reasonably good, is it as good as it would have been? Absolutely not. But is it something that I can now, it's something that it's going to be fun and much higher quality than it would have been only a couple months ago or a couple weeks ago. So, the zoom, I went past the 5, so it's a little soft. But the point is that it's allowing us to shoot this kind of footage in a way that hasn't been there before. And I do think that you could build a student film. If you're going to spend money, I'd rather spend money on actors and crafty and sets and everything else if I was trying to shoot a student film, because you're not storytelling is still the big problem, right? And so picking your shots and where you put them in. And I shoot all of my training on iPhones. So I never shoot any training on the cameras because it takes too long. It takes too long for me to do setups, And so with the iPhone, I can sit there and I can shoot a 4-minute training on how to build one of our rigs in 20 minutes or 30 minutes. I can never do that because the rig is, I got to figure out how to support it and where to put it.
I would concede that if we get better quality UFO pictures and video,
we're going to finally see Nessie. I mean, like it's going to be shot on an iPhone. Like there's an ad there somewhere. Finally we get to see Nessie.
Got her.
Finally we got the resolution. It turns out it's just a big snake.
Jason.
Yeah, I've got to at least say a little bit about what Mitch had to say. To me, there are 2 benefits here. One is profile, and then the other one is portability. And I don't just mean the portability of the rig, but also the portability of being able to shoot something that, whether or not you understand it, you can learn it in your pocket, and you can have something viable. And if you understand it, great. If not, photos actually could probably get you some of the way there. But yeah, I mean, a LUT is the way to go. My immediate thought on USB-C, like my initial reaction was just staggering. I took one of these tiny little OWC drives that I plugged into a 6K, I think, last time OWC was here, and it immediately detects, it immediately works. And as far as the portability is concerned, if you want to see the thing that I shot of that capture, here it is, and it's direct and it's instant, and I'm rolling it through focus. This kind of portability is to me just kind of there's just nothing like it.
Well, since you're making that point, let me note that my original rig that I shot most of this stuff on is this old Manfrotto monopod with a couple of quick release mounts up at the top. One of them I use for my actual iPhone rig that's in a small rig cage. The other one I use for a light. I'll show you a piece here in just a second, but this is actually now proven to be too large for some of my things. So I've actually modified, and I'm actually now using this as much as I use that. This thing comes down to be so small that it's something like that concert venue at Rady Hall. This was so stealthy. I could come in. We'd actually shot there during one concert where we had permission, but I needed some pickup shots. So a few days later, we bought tickets and went just as crowd people. And I was able to pull this out and get additional material because I didn't look like I was doing any big project. I didn't need anybody's permission to do it. Let me pop into this one real quick. And this is a thing we did for the Girl Scout Cookies closing drive celebration, which took place on the USS Midway. And it was a lot of fun because there's just tons of Girl Scouts out there. They're having a great time. They're getting their awards and their merit badges for having done really well in terms of their Girl Scout cookie endeavors. But the thing I want you to look for here as we move into the night, that rig, the iPhone rig, and its ability to capture low light imagery and really kind of bring people out of nothingness was so empowering. I had a little tiny light on that double rig, so a little LED panel light that just popped up in faces and shots like this and really brought people out of nothingness. Let me go, I can't really zoom through this, but if I could give you some of these later shots in here that took place late at night, it did a fabulous job of being able to cover an event that I would have had to just have so much more infrastructure to be able to cover later, like the shot there on the deck of the carrier, all these things that were very ill lit. And that's the little light on the camera just doing a much better job than I've ever had a tool to be able to do during the dancing and the crazy light stuff. And the girls are just having so much fun. And to be able to be a part of that without having too much stuff carried around was very, very matched to this project. It was more important to get down in the young ladies who were celebrating their success than it was to have the most perfect pictures. But I think these things are remarkably useful for what I was able to do. So I just think it is another tool. It's a kind of a tool that if you don't go out and shoot with these tools, you will not understand the nuances. Where are they good? Where are they not good? But once you do, you start thinking, you know what I could do? I could put it on the end of that monopod and sneak it around really quickly, let the image flip, and get a worm's eye view. So that becomes another shot that you can do that with the Blackmagic camera, that would have taken a half an hour and a crew of 3 to accomplish. And I just think this is the wave of one kind of shooting.
And again, from news gathering, this is going to make a huge difference.
Huge.
This is. I mean, now you can get incredibly high quality, and we've already seen this for the last 5 years. A lot of news gathering, smaller news gathering, has been moving to iPhones for the last 5 years. And so they've been doing more and more of this. And then it went from being a crew of 3 people, a producer, and then a camera operator, and the host, down to oftentimes the host with a tripod, or a selfie stick. And we can talk about the demise of broadcast television. But the bottom line is being able to do stand-ups by yourself with something that is going to shoot this kind of footage is going to continue to impact that. But also just from the standpoint of everybody's got a phone, and now you're showing up at an event, they're not going to take your phone away, like they can, and so,
exactly.
So you're going to be able to shoot a lot of footage that if you brought in any other kind of camera, you're going to get stopped, and so I think that it's a really, fascinating thing.
We've got a lot of questions backing up. Let's get to them. So, Mitch, dive in.
First up, Jack Ruppel from Breckenridge, Colorado. Has anyone tried to program their flashlight on their iPhone as a tally light when using a camera app? Blackmagic camera app?
Jason, is there any possibility to get into your light?
Even if you could, you shouldn't, because the tally light, rule number 1 for the tally light is that it shouldn't affect your subject. Bad idea. But also, the Blackmagic app itself is not a mainline contribution. It is a nearline contribution. So it's uploading to the cloud. So a tally light wouldn't be useful under that scenario anyway.
I have seen circumstances where an interface designer will put like a 1/4-inch border around your monitor, and when it turns green to yellow to red, that can signal somebody in selfie mode that your camera is live. So in that respect, tally is probably something that someone could code into the interface, assuming you're using the camera the way that they want you to use it, not the way you want to necessarily. Just a thought. Next question.
Peter Rosado in Las Vegas, Nevada, asking, for the new iPhone 15 Pro owners out there, how many of you have played with the USB-C expandability?
And Jason and Alex have. Jason, start us off, and then we'll go to Alex.
Very, very first thing I did, I plugged in that tiny little OWC drive, and it worked. I've plugged in the Express dock and been able to get Ethernet out of it. And this is gigabit Ethernet as well as HDMI, which is pretty cool.
Alex.
Yeah, I didn't do it very first thing, but I definitely did it to make sure that it was ready for this today, to make sure I had done it once. And it IDs it seamlessly, to make sure that it's ready to go. And I was surprised at how I was looking for settings. I was like, how do I tell it to record to the drive? And it's like, if you plug the drive in, the phone expects you to, that's what you want to do. Like it's not asking you anymore, should I do it to the home drive or not? It's expecting that. And you get a little, especially if you're doing something over, because if 4K 60, you have to do that if you're doing log. And so anyway, it's really an easy process.
So it's very Apple-like. Plug it
in. And again, when we go back to news gathering, when we go back to using anything, being able to record all of this and put it on a drive, And then eventually, the other advantage to this is the cell phone. One thing we haven't tested yet, which will be the next thing for us to test, is the Blackmagic Cloud through the Blackmagic camera. When it comes back to news gathering, the ability to sit there and be able to be recording high quality video and uploading it in real time back to, like as soon as you hit stop, having it uploading to the cloud, having that seamlessly appear inside of Resolve is going to be a really interesting puzzle, because it's going to allow us to turn news information much faster than we have in the past.
Jason, you wanted to come back in?
Yeah, and Alex mentioned at the very top the sheer size of RAW. I, again, first day did a fair bit of stuff. This is a 30-second video of a tree outside, and then the same version in RAW. And Alex was my test case. I sent them to him in I think it was Google Drive. 30 seconds video, 6 gigs. So yeah, it's a lot of data, and that's a good thing.
Well, that's one of the hardest compression tests there are. There's nothing like small leaves in a windy day to, there's no blocks that you can figure out here. You're just going to have to compress everything.
And I will say that a lot of the thing that I've done in the past, I see things that would be a good test case. And so I go to certain locations, and in the past, and I will still do it with the Blackmagic 12K oftentimes, I will do it with a 12K because I can shoot 8K and I can shoot 4K and I can shoot different frame rates and I can do all these other things. And those are very specific ones that I have to plan for, and I have to figure out my power consumption. I have to do all these other things. The ability to just be able to go, I'm going to go and shoot something. Oh, I see something while I'm at the airport or at somewhere else, and I simply want to capture that. Now being able to capture at this level, as for these are streaming test cases. Usually what they are, a lot of, like what Jason shot, a lot of moving parts that I think that are pretty, and I want to grab them to use them as tests.
Absolutely. Mitchell, you wanted to get back in before the end of this?
Yeah, I just shot a TV commercial with an Arri. Obviously, that's higher end stuff. And I've been experimenting with different LUTs. And a regular 709 LUT does completely different look than using the Arri 709 LUT for that camera. Is there a special LUT available for the iPhone 15 that does the same thing?
Yeah, there is as I showed it right at the very beginning, but what you want to do is you need to set your source, before, when you start to do the transform, what you're looking for here is that you want to, you're going to set this to Rec 2020 in Apple Log. So that's where you're going to start. And then you can set your target to whatever, there's a lot of different ways that you can set target. But this is the source right now that is typically going to be what you use to get out of the phone. So that's and then you can go there. And again, I haven't gone into we'll probably do not necessarily an entire talk about ASUS in the future. But that's a whole nother bit of that, because ASUS has to be supported glass to glass, and so having it here is important. But I haven't dug that deep enough into it because I only had the phone for a couple of days, so we're still working through that.
There you go. Let's move to the next question.
Jack Ruppel from Breckenridge, Colorado. I bought an ONN.Walmart 500 gigabyte SSD for recording ProRes video on my iPhone 15 Pro Max. What do I have to do to prepare the drive? Can it be done on the phone? Alex, wisdom.
I didn't try to do it on the phone. I just have it. I had a standard Mac partition set up for, that I had a blank drive with the standard way that I would do any of those things. And so I think that's not, I don't think that you need, I don't know if you can do it from the phone. This is, I'm using just the, in my case, APFS is what I had this one. Oh, no, sorry, different one here. Hold on, let me grab this again. Well, actually, so what's interesting is that this one, because of how I was using this drive earlier, is actually exFAT, which I wouldn't think would work. so the exFAT, it's set to exFAT because I was doing something else. And so, there's a lot of different ways that you can, you can decide whether it's exFAT or MS Mac OS extended. So I probably wouldn't do case sensitive journal, just journaled. So exFAT is not what I would normally use, but it worked. I thought I already had it in Mac OS extended, but I I didn't. So it still sees exFAT and that. And I used the, it's been formatted at some point. I mean, I grabbed a blank drive off the desk. I have a pile of them. So I just grabbed one of those and plugged it in. And, but it was an exFAT format and it would work just fine. It probably can work. You could probably buy it and plug it in and it would work. I will say you'll go through 500 gigs really fast. I mean, with what we're doing here, it's probably 60 minutes of footage.
So we got a lot of questions still to come. Next one.
Albie Lopez from San Antonio, Texas. Have you attempted to connect a drive and a USB mic, such as a Rode Go or DJI?
Alex.
Haven't yet, but definitely that is the next thing, is to figure out how do we interface audio interfaces and all kinds of other things. It's going to be some version of a USB-C hub or some kind of breakout, and I don't know what that is yet, and we're going to be working on it over the next couple weeks.
I would bet that the big names that we know of who have done this kind of thing are working crazy because they've got now access to this new port. It's Europe and America. It's a big market. So somebody who does the little micro mixer that allows you to handle that USB-C port and address it for various things, there'll be a big market there. It
really is going to be. There's a huge expansion that's happening right now, and I bet you there's going to be a lot of new products by the time we get to early next year.
Yeah. Let's go to the next question.
Douglas Carmichael, how would you get the ProRes files off of the phone? Would you be dependent on iCloud?
Jason, help us out.
Okay, assuming you haven't shot it from directly to the drive, the Files app. That's it. It's that easy.
Okay, next question.
And it's from Jack Ruppel in Breckenridge, Colorado. I have many voicemails from my 100-and-a-half-year-old mother who just passed. Can I use AI to have her read her letters and postcards to me, audio in her voice?
John Preto.
If you can move those voicemails off and upload them to 11labs.io, 11 written out, then you can duplicate her voice, and then you can have her read anything you put in the text box.
There you go. So 11 Labs is your kind of translator from text to a voice that you have programmed into your phone. Next question.
Craig McFarlane from Boston, Massachusetts. Have you tried Apple's music feature, Sing Karaoke Mode, which lets you raise or lower the main singer's voice? I assume by channel analysis. I discovered by accidentally switching it on, but I couldn't figure out what was going on.
I'm laughing only because I've done that a couple of times. I switched a feature on and didn't quite know how to get it off. Alex, what say you?
I have no idea. I didn't even know this feature existed. So now my karaoke, which I have never actually done karaoke, so I don't know. I haven't tried that yet. But I do find it fun to have the fact that you can take the voice out of another song. So that is the one thing that's interesting with the karaoke is you can just remove the voice. Typically because it's in a phantom center that it can find. It might take a little bit with it, but it's using machine learning to figure that out with these songs. But I haven't heard about the pitch shift. That's kind of fun.
Yeah, that would be major fun. Let's see. Next question.
David Brady from New York, New York. So, okay, the latest and greatest instills, G.A.S, and F.O.M.O in some, but what about the Island of Misfit iPhones? What are you doing with the drawer full of previous models?
That's funny. For those of you who are not into our acronym system, G.A.S, Gear Acquisition Syndrome, it is our relentless need to figure out what the latest and greatest thing is and acquire it. And then F.O.M.O, fear of missing out, because if you don't get the latest gear, you're going to fall behind. It's this terrible feeling in the pit of your stomach. So, Alex, start us off. What's your
I don't know what you're talking about. I don't I don't know why. I have no idea what you're talking about.
First step, Alex, is admitting you have a problem.
And these are the ones that I didn't give to my kids and my wife. These are the ones that are just laying around. And so I passed them down. My kids have destroyed a couple of them, in learning how to manage safety of an iPhone. I've got a couple of them that are in shards now. But that's where and I've been better about getting them good cases now. And so that's worked out well. If you have a family or have other people that you can give them to, I'm actually taking last year's, the 14, and I'm trading it in. So Apple sent me a little box. I'm going to put it back in. Mine's in mint condition because I don't even take it out of the case until I have a case for it. So I take it out of the case, put it into the case, put the screen protector on it. So it sits in a little cocoon for a year until I get the next one. And again, I don't recommend getting every year's phone. I do this because I'm on a show. we talk about these things. And so I recommend every 2 or 3 years, maybe thinking about it if there's a feature that you buy things because there's a feature that makes a difference. This one has a lot of features that make a difference for me. So I would have probably bought this one no matter what. Anyway, the other things I do with the phones, I use them for comms. So Unity runs and Agent IC runs on them really well. So I use them to run comms. So that way my phone is still free. But I have comms on another phone. So that works out well. I use them for clocks. So I use Atomic Clock or other things, and I throw little clocks up, and they work really well for that. And I also sometimes just use them for messaging separately so that so my phone is my phone, and I'm doing whatever I'm doing with it. And I have these auxiliary ones that might have it. It also runs the Stream Deck software really well and other kind of control things like that, that don't require a lot of CPU.
John Preto.
I upgraded every year since 3GS, except for the 13 to 14. And I'm upgrading from the 13 to the 15. And in preparation of upgrading to the 14, I had the back glass fixed, $200. I picked it up and I dropped it walking out of the store and broke the glass again.
Murphy's Law raises its ugly head and snaps you. Sorry about that, John. That's got to feel bad. Let's go on to the next question.
Albie Lopez from San Antonio, Texas. What is the editor of choice for some iOS editor iPhone specific? CapCut, VN, Adobe Rush, just for a quick turnaround on an iPhone.
Jason Beish.
100%. For me, it's clips every single time. It works quickly, and it can let you just burn through things. It'll do live real-time captioning. Plus, if you also really want to waste some time, you can do one of these talking emoji things just for kicks.
There you go, Alex.
The one that's the most popular, if it's not native, so oftentimes, it's whether it's CapCut or TikToks or whatever, if it's not a native app that's designed for that, the one we've seen the most popular is actually iMovie. And so a lot of people shoot and edit with iMovie on their phone.
Yeah, it's kind of, Apple engineers doing things to be most efficient in the Apple ecosystem. And
we would say we would talk cross-platform, except that, 90% of the population under 18 is using an iPhone. I think technically it's 87% by the last poll. So, when it comes to editing this stuff for online, it's really an iPhone world.
There you go. Next question.
Courtney Gooden from Hollywood, California, saw lots of rolling shutter artifacts in Bill's demo footage. Is there a way to minimize this in the new iPhone? Does it have a global shutter mode?
It does not, but you're seeing that, I think, from the translation in here. I will say that I have not had a single client in all of this. Now, occasionally I see a shutter anomaly. Usually it's a raster thing. At that Rady Shell thing, they had big screens that were on almost all of my shots, and I had a couple of circumstances where the zoom lane plus the raster mismatch. But I am not seeing a lot of that kind of thing in real, and I wish I could post. These are all public-facing videos. That's why I was able to use them today. Most of the stuff that I do for them is not. But let me see if I can find some way, and maybe I'll put a link in the chat to my Vimeo page or something like that, and throw a few of these up there in case anybody wants to see what the actual quality that I was able to get out of iPhone footage might be. Plus, you'll get the music. The music is a lovely part of that. So, Alex, do you have another thought?
I think for both Blackmagic and Apple, I think global shutter is the next frontier. And I think within the next 2 versions of the phone, we'll probably see global shutter added to it, because as Apple keeps on ratcheting this thing up. But you're right, it doesn't have that. And you do have to think about that. And when you're thinking about what kind of footage you're shooting, that's probably why you wouldn't shoot an action film with it right now.
Yeah. Mitchell.
Yeah, I find that very interesting, because even some brand new high-end Sony cameras don't have global shutter in them. So isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
It's hard.
Well, yeah, they're moving. Let's go to the next question.
Douglas Carmichael. Alex, when would you use FILMiC instead of Blackmagic Cam?
FILMiC folks are friends of our show, and I feel bad about saying that I would not use FILMiC at this point. Like, it's the level of tool set and the ease of use and everything else, unless I don't see any advantage that FILMiC has over the Blackmagic camera. So what I'm hoping is they're going to find some advantages that they can take advantage of and make that available. But I think that they and a couple other film teams have some pretty hard days ahead as they try to figure out what to do. A Blackmagic camera for free with the level of I mean, it came out as a very mature app. I'm still learning how to use the Blackmagic camera. So I would say right now, if someone paid me today to go shoot something, I might use FILMiC, because I just don't know the Blackmagic camera well enough yet. I keep on opening it and there's a lot to it. And it's not a set and forget kind of thing. What the stuff I've shot so far that I've shown you, I've been shooting with the Apple app, because the FILMiC one, I kept on getting the settings, and I'm trying to figure out where those settings are. Like, it's not a couple things about it that aren't as obvious, and so I'm trying to work through those things. But I'm testing with the Blackmagic camera right now. Within the next couple of weeks, I think that's probably all I'll use to shoot footage.
And I will have to admit that in the first few of those videos I shot, I stuck with the Apple just standard video capture suite. Did a great job of HDR capture. It was not really robust in terms of features and the ability to set things, but the automated settings gave me really good results in the first couple of videos I was exploring there. And so, sometimes you don't really need a lot. It depends on the style you're shooting. Other people will be on the opposite side of the spectrum from me. Without specific fine controls that are more along the lines of what Blackmagic has done, they will not feel comfortable, and I get that. But I will say that we also remember, don't forget, Final Cut is now on iOS for iPad. They see that as a development effort. I know they've been hiring engineers for those kind of things. So it wouldn't surprise me if they look at their mobile editing software offerings and continue to turn them up just inside Apple, because there is, I think, a market there that they are interested in exploring. Let's go to the next question.
Craig Karaoke, Toronto, Canada. Any test yet with the USB hubs? How do you power the iPhone with a drive hanging off of it?
Jason, what have you been experiencing?
Easiest way to do it is with the OWC Express dock. It will plug power straight through.
There you go. Simple as can be. Next question.
Rob Collins, Kansas City, Missouri. How good is the iPhone Pro's periscope zoom when compared to other periscope cameras like the S23 Ultra?
Alex.
I have no idea, because I haven't used the S23 Ultra. I hear the S23 Ultra's camera is amazing, and so we haven't been able to go head to head with it. I think it really comes down to, are you an Android user or are you an iPhone user? And, so people don't really make a decision. Most people won't make a decision between the phones based on the camera. They want to see a new camera, so they buy a new phone, but most people aren't jumping from one side to the other for the cameras.
Now, my friend Mark Spencer, who's part of Ripple Training, posted something the other day about a photographer who did a very deep, in-depth look at the iPhone, quote, periscope camera, this new exceptional zoom. And he gave it pretty good reviews, but he did say at the long end of it that it is not completely without artifact in terms of the long end of the zoom thing, and I think he mentions the Samsung offering specifically, they maybe have more optical and a little less boost in there. Again, I'm not saying that this is solid. And I do believe that as these things continue to evolve, you have to test and says, does this meet your needs? For me, even the existing standard camera in the iPhone running through the camera app met my needs and got me paid by my clients for the videos I did for them. And what they loved was the energy, the joy, the enthusiasm that I could capture by being out among an event and portray their sponsorship of that event in a very positive way. So that was most important to me. But I understand people who are the pixel peeping type. I think I love you guys, folks who do that kind of thing. You really do advance the thing, but that's my experience. Different folks, different strokes for different folks. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, the thing to remember is that the Creator, which just came out, was all shot on FX3. And when you see Gareth Edwards talk about it, he's just like, it gave me a lot more fluidity. It's the same kind of thing that I was able to just go out there and be able to move much more fluidly and create the story that I'm looking for that would have been much harder with a large camera.
This has changed everything for me about how I approach an event coverage. It's just so easy. I can sneak in, I can get the shots I want, I can go high, I can go low. it really does free you in terms of the ability to shoot in a different style than I might be used to with a tripod. Go ahead, Mitchell.
What Alex just said just completely floored me. The fact that my FX3, which I'm using as a webcam, was used to shoot a major motion picture. Wow. That's something.
With a lot of effects. Like not this isn't like a major motion picture that was like a romantic comedy. This is a effects heavy film that is I've had the opportunity. I haven't seen the movie yet, but I've seen some pretty significant clips to it. You would never think that. It's just amazing. Like it's just an amazing film. Like the pieces of it, I'm looking forward to seeing it. It might actually get me out of my cave to go see it in the theater.
High praise indeed.
You gotta support your ILM brothers out there.
Let's go to the next question.
Douglas Carmichael asking, Jason, I was very impressed by your short test. What was creating that screensaver, and how did you connect your iPhone to your Mac?
Go ahead, Jason.
Okay, number of different ways. The screen cap that you just saw was actually wirelessly. I used I think it's Inventor or Sonoma, but you can actually screen share directly to a Mac. So that was an M2 Mini that I was going directly to. But there are plenty of other ways to do that. Here it is through a Pro Dock using, and very fast. Hit the wrong button instead of switching. I'm muted. Yeah, you can do it any number of ways. The first way was through a dock, and the second way was through Wi-Fi, and that is a native screensaver to Mac OS.
Let's go to the next question.
Eduardo Augustine in Panama City, Panama. When editing videos from my iPhone to DaVinci Resolve 18, it seems to change the colors. How could that be? The only way I can keep the colors from the iPhone in editing is with the same iPhone.
So that might be, Apple does use a managed color pipeline. And so I don't know if DaVinci Resolve is somehow switching that. Alex, do you have any thoughts?
I think he was, so it may be that he's getting different colors from different iPhones, and that would mean that their color profiles are different from the different iPhones. So it's probably a newer and older one. So you do have to, the newer iPhones, the last couple years, I think the last 2 or 3 years, definitely a very different one, especially if they're shooting in HDR mode and now in log mode, they're definitely going to have a different profile to them. So you do have to look at what you have it set to record to. So are you recording to the compressed, the H.265 format? Are you recording to ProRes log? What is the color? Is it HLG or Vision or kind of a bit of both, or 709. So these are all things that you now have to pay attention to. And if you're shooting with the same phone, they'll all come out the same. I mean, because you didn't change anything. But if you shoot with different phones, especially an older a phone 2 or 3 years older, you would definitely see some color changes as they go in, because a lot of it has to do also with how Resolve is set up. So what is its standard transfer function that's in the project, as well as directly derived from the from your color plane.
Let's go to the next question.
Albie Lopez from San Antonio, Texas is back. Do you still look for having an ND filter when recording log to have a better control of highlights?
Mitchell, what say you?
That's a big ask. I mean, for example, I'm using an FX3. It does not have built-in ND filter. In fact, the higher-end cameras, some of them don't have built-in ND filters, and it's usually a mechanical issue. I don't think they electronically can make the same thing happen with a filter of some kind. So in an iPhone, an ND filter, I don't think so, unless you clip it on there.
Alex?
Yeah, they do have ND filters for them. There's a Moment makes them, and there's a couple other ones that do make those. I don't know if they're for this one yet, but they'll come out. And of course, the ND filter does more than just the log. It's going to protect those highlights when you go to a lower shutter speed. So basically, your camera will automatically speed that shutter up, and you'll lose some of your motion blur as you go into that. So the ND filter is going to allow you. It's why you don't really need it for a film camera, oftentimes, because you're not. Film camera, you're trying to get as high a shutter speed as you can oftentimes, so you don't get the motion blur. But with film, we're going to be for 24 frames a second, we're going to be at 1/48. That's a very wide open. So if you're in a sunny day and that can't close down, you're in trouble. So you need to put the ND filter on for that.
And let's go to the next question.
Craig McFarlane from Boston, Massachusetts. Any special things to do before returning an iPhone in the trade-in program other than standard backup and erase?
Jason.
Turn off Find My. cancel Apple Care if you still have it, or they will keep billing you. And if you're really paranoid and want to be sure that your information is completely off of the phone, encrypt it using a different iCloud ID and a different passcode, and then wipe it again. And your original image is going to be pretty dead.
There you go. Mitchell.
I agree with what Jason just said. Plus, make sure you save the original box it came in.
Okay. Alex, you had another thought?
And, I know other people will sell their phones and do other things like that. I would only do this with Apple. Like, I would only return my phone to Apple, because even I will do everything, I will reduce it to a state, but Apple's entire business model is around privacy. So while they've had a couple people here and there, you have an entire pipeline that's designed to, the first thing they're going to do when they get your phone is flash it. They don't want to have any of that go out. So they don't have to try to protect it or open it or anything else. They're going to they'll do a low level reset to it as it rolls through the system. And so I would not use I'm going to obviously flatten mine the best way I can, but I know that I have one layer after that Apple's most likely going to do it again.
Thank you all for what a great discussion today, for coming in and taking on the new iPhone. Hopefully, those of you who are watching learned everything you wanted to learn today. A couple of quick announcements before we dive out of here. We have a new panelist meeting on Saturday, 10/7 at 9 a.m. Pacific time. If you're interested in being a panelist, Alex will be there to guide you through the process. Friday's show is cable management, as I noted. We all wish the world was wireless, but we still need cables. So if you want to talk about that, we'll be here tomorrow to do that. Our thanks to our producers, the panelists, the crew in the back end, everybody who puts in all their effort to make this show happen every single day. Don't forget the after hours happens 24/7. It's always on. Our Talak traversal today, and I'm looking down here, we did 84,421 miles. That's 135,000 kilometers, more than 667 million bananas for scale. There's one back there on the thing, but I'm not going to grab it. Thank you for viewing the show today. We'll see you all here tomorrow.
Get to my video.
You and me, Alex, we're going to show some warehouses next time we cover this.
Yeah, exactly. I gotta I'm gonna probably post that. I realize that it's hard to, in the archives, it's hard to get to, so I might post it on YouTube or something like that. It's fun. I realized
I didn't have dropouts today. I had a lot of.
No, you sounded fine.
Did I? Okay. The loop back that I was listening to, I was getting all sorts of people were freezing, dropouts, all sorts of stuff.
I feel like I kind of, we had a lot of concurrent viewers today. So much for it not being, I was like, I don't know if this is really going to work.
People were really
just checked
interested.
that, Alex.
People want more content about the iPhone 15, apparently.
I mean, it's like
higher than normal.
It's way higher than normal.